crash happened just before dawn. Sky was turning pale when the sound of tearing metal broke the silence of the valley. Lieutenant Aaron Blake had only a few seconds to react. The transport ship spun in the air, shaking so hard he thought the world was breaking apart. The control lights flashed red, alarms screamed in his ears, and heat scorched the side of his face. Then everything went white. When he awoke, the air was thick with smoke. His throat burned. Half of the ship lay in ruins behind him, black smoke curling upward into the morning sky. He tried to move and felt sharp pain shoot through his shoulder. For a few long seconds, breathing itself felt like lifting a mountain. He looked around. All he could see were broken pieces of metal, shattered equipment, and a spreading fire. It was quiet now, except for the crackle of flames and the low hiss of burning wires. No other voices, no footsteps. The sound of silence filled the air like a heavy blanket. Aaron pulled himself up with one good arm. His uniform was torn, and blood was running down from a cut above his elbow. He pressed his hand against it to stop the bleeding. Around him, the valley stretched far and empty, a wide land of gray stone and pale grass. The hills rose like broken walls on either side. He saw no sign of life, no bird, no movement in the haze. He tried to remember what had happened. Their mission had been simple: escort Queen Isabella's envoy through the borderlands. They had been flying under royal command, carrying data and letters of alliance between the cities of the north and south. The pilot had reported strange movement on the radar. Then, out of nowhere, something struck them. Maybe sabotage, maybe betrayal. But now none of that mattered. Aaron checked his gear. His weapon was gone. His radio was shattered. The only working thing was the tiny emergency beacon on his belt. When he turned it on, the light blinked weakly, sending a faint signal into the air. He hoped someone would notice, though deep down he doubted it. He started walking away from the wreck, looking for higher ground where he might find a better signal. The valley floor was rough, covered with ash and pieces of metal from the ship. Every step hurt his ribs. He told himself to keep moving. That was what soldiers did: move, breathe, survive. After some time, he saw movement on a distant ridge. At first, he thought his eyes were fooling him. The shapes were vague through the smoke figures on horseback, moving fast. Their banners shimmered with color as the light hit them: royal gold and deep blue. His heart tightened in his chest. He straightened his back, though he could barely stand, and planted his boots in the dirt. If this was rescue, he would be ready to salute. If it was something worse, he would still face it upright. As the riders came closer, he saw armor flashing in the sunlight, and in the lead rode a young woman in silver and blue. For a second, his tired mind could not believe it. Queen Isabella herself was in the valley. He had seen her only once from afar, during a military parade, but there was no mistaking her now. The riders stopped a few meters from him. Dust rose around their horses. The queen swung down effortlessly, her cloak trailing behind her. She was tall, calm, and serious, her eyes sharp and clear. "You are Lieutenant Aaron Blake," she said. Her voice carried through the still air. Aaron saluted, his movements stiff but certain. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said quietly. His throat was rough from smoke. "My ship went down. I'm the only one left." She looked past him at the broken metal and burning wreck. The faint lines of pain around her eyes deepened. For a long moment, she said nothing. "Who attacked you?" she asked finally. "I don't know, ma'am. But someone wanted this mission stopped." The queen nodded slowly. "Stay still. My men will see to your wound." He shook his head. "Others first." "There are no others," she said softly. Aaron felt the ground tilt beneath his feet. He had known it, but hearing it out loud struck harder than he expected. She saw his face, and for a brief moment, something human flickered in her eyes: pity, or perhaps respect. "Then let us see that you live long enough to tell your story," she said. Her guards lifted him carefully. Pain flared in his shoulder, but he did not cry out. As they carried him away from the wreck, Aaron looked back one last time at the smoke rising into the sky. The mission was in ruins, yet somehow he felt the story was only beginning. The Queen's arrival here was no accident. He could feel it deep in the ache of his bones. Fate had drawn her to this valley for a reason he did not yet understand. And as the dawn broke fully across the hills, like its light falling over the wreckage, it shone not like an ending, but like a quiet promise that nothing would ever be the same again. Aaron woke up in a bright white room. It took him a moment to understand that he was no longer in the valley. The air smelled clean, and soft light came through tall windows. He tried to move, but his shoulder hurt whenever he breathed too deeply. Thick bandages covered his chest and arm. For a while, he thought he might still be dreaming. A nurse came to check on him. She looked young, with kind eyes and quick hands. She said he was in the royal citadel, deep within the main city, under the queen's protection. It took him a while to believe her. Only days ago he had been lying in ashes, certain he would die among the wreckage. Now he was inside golden walls, surrounded by guards and silence. When the nurse left, Aaron lay still and looked around. His room was simple, but clean and bright. There was a chair by the window and a small wooden table. The view outside showed the city below, rooftops shining with morning light and banners fluttering in the breeze. He was trying to remember more of the crash when the door opened. A tall man entered, wearing a dark green uniform. His expression was stern but not unkind. He introduced himself as Captain Harris, one of the Queen's advisors. "The Queen asked me to check on you," Harris said. "She wishes to speak with you when you are strong enough." Aaron nodded. "I am strong enough, sir." The captain smiled slightly. "She said you'd say that. You soldiers are all the same." By evening, Aaron was helped into clean clothes and brought through long halls of marble and gold. The citadel seemed almost unreal. High ceilings, shining floors, and guards who stood so still they looked carved from stone. He could feel the weight of history in those walls. Every portrait, every banner, every quiet step carried stories older than any war he had fought. Finally, the guards opened massive doors leading into a wide chamber. At the far end stood Queen Isabella. She was speaking softly with two advisors, but when Aaron entered, she stopped and turned toward him. Her eyes were calm, but there was something behind them, a shadow of worry that no one else seemed to notice. "Lieutenant Aaron Blake," she said, walking toward him. "You recover faster than my physicians expected." "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said, standing straight. "Your people took good care of me." She looked at his bandaged arm for a long moment before meeting his gaze. "I wanted to thank you myself. My men said you refused to leave the crash until the others were found. There should have been survivors," he said softly. "I couldn't leave them." Her voice grew quiet. "There were none. You were lucky to survive it all." For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The wind outside stirred the curtains slightly, filling the silence. "Tell me what you remember," she said. "Leave nothing out." Aaron told her everything he could. The strange lights on the radar, the sharp flash that hit the ship, how the engines failed within seconds. He spoke carefully, trying to remember the details through the haze of pain and smoke. The Queen listened without interrupting, her hands clasped before her. When he finished, she looked thoughtful. "If it was sabotage, then someone inside the royal court may be responsible." He frowned. "Someone in your own circle?" "It has happened before," she said, her tone distant. "Power attracts greed. Even here." He could see the weight on her shoulders. Beneath the crown and the calm face was someone carrying endless worries and empire balanced on her every decision. "You trusted the wrong person? Maybe," Aaron said quietly. "Perhaps," she answered, meeting his eyes again. "But I will not make that mistake twice." She looked at him for another moment. "I am forming a small investigation group. I would like you to join it. You have experience, and you know what you saw." "Your Majesty, I am not from your guard," he said carefully. "I am just a pilot." Her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "Just a pilot who survived what no other man could." "I like those odds." Aaron hesitated, but then nodded. "As you command." "Good," she said. "You'll start tomorrow. It's tonight." As he bowed and turned to leave, she added, "Lieutenant, courage is common on the battlefield. Honesty is harder to find. Keep both." Those words stayed with him long after he left her chamber. That night, Aaron walked slowly back through the quiet halls. The wound in his shoulder throbbed with each step, yet beneath the pain, a strange energy stirred in him. The Queen's trust was an unexpected weight. He had never planned to serve anyone beyond his duty, but now he was pulled into something larger. From a tower balcony, he looked down at the city. Lights were blossoming along the streets, and the distant hum of life filled the evening air. He thought of the crash, of the lost crew, and of the Queen's steady eyes. Somewhere in those walls lurked the truth. She feared a traitor who had turned loyalty into betrayal. And Aaron, a wounded soldier who had fallen from the sky, now carried the task of finding it. He whispered to the night air, "No more failures." The wind caught his words and carried them across the sleeping city. As the moon rose above the towers of the citadel, watching like a silent promise, Aaron walked through the royal citadel the next morning, with his arms still stiff from the wound. The halls were quiet except for the echo of his boots on the marble floor. The morning light spread through tall windows and made the air look almost gold. He had been given a plain uniform, not the heavy armor of the royal guard. But he felt the weight of responsibility just the same. Captain Harris met him outside the council chamber. The man looked serious, but a spark of approval showed when he saw Aaron upright and ready. "The Queen is expecting you. Remember, not everyone in that room is your friend," Harris said quietly. Aaron nodded once. He had already guessed that. When he stepped into the chamber, 4 people sat around a long wooden table. The Queen was in the center, her presence calm and commanding. To her right sat a thin man named Lord Benton, who had a pointed nose and watchful eyes. To her left sat Lady Mira, head of finance, and 2 royal captains stood behind them with their hands on their swords. "We begin," the Queen said.
How?
Her voice was steady and clear. "Lieutenant Blake has offered to help us with the investigation into the attack. He survived what none of our soldiers did. We will listen to him." Aaron told them again what little he remembered: the flash in the sky, sound of metal breaking, the fall through the clouds. He explained how the instruments all failed at once, as if something had cut through their systems from the inside. Lord Benton leaned back in his chair and said, "This sounds dramatic, but men under shock often confuse what they see. It's possibly a storm, or even your pilot's mistake." Aaron looked at him calmly. "The pilot was my friend, who is not the kind to make mistakes." The Queen gave a single glance in Benton's direction, and the man fell silent. "Continue," she said. Aaron spoke of the faint signal he had seen before the crash, a coded mark that looked like a signal beacon but wasn't one of theirs. Lady Mira frowned at that, making notes. The Queen turned to her advisors. "We need to find where that code came from. Check every communication line in the last 20 days. Someone sent something that should not have been there." The meeting ended, and the others began to drift out, whispering to one another. The Queen stopped Aaron as he turned to leave. "Walk with me," she said. They left the chamber and followed a quiet path through the palace gardens. The corridors opened into a courtyard full of sunlight and flowers. A fountain sang softly in the center. She spoke without looking at him. "You spoke the truth in there. I could see it. But truth is not enough. I need proof." Aaron looked around at the smooth walls and shining towers. "Someone is hiding proof inside these walls," he said. "If they could bring down a royal ship, they could bring everything down." Her eyes flicked toward him, sharp and careful. "That is why I'm trusting you. You walk unseen among my world. They expect me to watch nobles, not a simple soldier." He nodded slightly, understanding. Later that day, Captain Harris took Aaron through the lower halls of the Citadel, where the engine rooms and data lines were kept. The place was full of humming machines and soft blue light. Soldiers watched as Aaron studied the control boards. He noticed small marks on one of the panel's manual overrides that should not have been touched. Harris frowned, and Aaron leaned closer. "This was done by someone inside," he said. "They used clearance only the high staff would have." That night, they traced the record of that clearance to a single name: Lord Benton. Aaron told the Queen the next morning. She did not show fear or anger. She simply said, "Bring him to the engine halls." Quietly. The confrontation came fast. Benton arrived, acting proud and calm until he saw the guards waiting. The Queen walked in behind him, her posture straight as a blade. "You sold us to the Border Kings," she said coldly. He tried to protest, but Harris opened the machine logs and showed the proof. Benton's face turned pale. "You can't prove why I did it," he muttered. "The throne does not care about loyalty, only power." "The throne," she said softly, "cares about both." "But you know nothing of loyalty." She gave a small nod. The guards moved in and took him away. When the doors closed again, the Queen turned to Aaron. "You were right. Still, this is only the edge of something larger." Aaron rubbed his sore arm. "Then we keep digging," he said. Her eyes softened slightly. "You sound more like one of my own soldiers every day." "I follow duty, not crowns," he said quietly. She smiled faintly. "That may be why I trust you." That night, as the city lay under stars, Aaron stood on the balcony again, and looked over the lights below. The queen's kingdom glittered like a sea of glass, beautiful and calm, yet beneath it he could feel the tremor of unrest. The traitor had been caught, but whoever gave him orders was still free. He thought of the faces of the men who had died in the crash, and the sound of the queen's voice when she said she trusted him. He made a silent promise that he would not fail again. Whatever storm was rising in this kingdom, he would stand ready to face it. And somewhere behind him in the golden tower windows, Queen Isabella watched the same stars with quiet eyes, knowing that peace was only a thin surface stretched over deeper fires waiting to burn. The palace was tense after the arrest of Lord Benton. News of his betrayal spread quietly through the halls like smoke through cracks. Nobody spoke openly, but the atmosphere had changed. Servants whispered less, guards watched everyone closer, and small groups of officials met behind closed doors. Aaron noticed the change right away. Every step through the corridor brought hushed voices and eyes that avoided his. He had helped expose one traitor, and that made people both respect and fear him. But he did not care for either feeling. He cared only about finding the truth. Queen Isabella kept her calm. To the public, she smiled and ruled as usual, but Aaron could see the weight resting on her. Sometimes, when they discussed reports late at night, her eyes would wander toward the window as if she were trying to read something written in the stars. One evening she called Aaron to the war chamber. He found her standing by the large map table, her gold crown resting beside her hand instead of upon her head. She looked less like a ruler and more like a person fighting to keep her world from falling apart. "They will come soon," she said quietly, looking down at the map. Benton was not acting alone. We found messages hidden in his rooms. They speak of an attack on the capital. Aaron walked closer. "Do we know when?" "No," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "The message was damaged in the transfer. Captain Harris and the signal team are still working on the rest. But it speaks of the Red Dawn and the Western Gate. I fear that means the attack could come any moment." He frowned at the map and drew a finger over the western side of the city. That gate led to the trade port, where supplies and merchants came daily. It was open most hours and crowded with people. He looked up. "They will strike there when it's full of civilians." She nodded slowly. "Yes. It would set panic through the city. That is what they want." Aaron felt the old soldier in him take over. The pain in his arm didn't matter now. "Then we close the gate and prepare the defense." But she shook her head. "If we close it too soon, the people will notice and fear will spread by morning. I need a quiet way." "Can you go there tonight and look for signs of movement? You know how saboteurs act. Find anything unusual?" He bowed slightly. "I will, Your Majesty." Night fell quickly. Aaron slipped through the lower halls, past the royal guards, and out into the cool air of the city. He moved through narrow streets where oil lamps glowed and merchants cleaned their stalls. The smell of rain and metal filled the air. When he reached the western gate, the place looked normal, busy, but calm. Traders loaded carts, guards joked by the walls, and the great metal doors stood open. Yet something felt off. He had lived long enough to trust his instincts. He walked slowly, watching everything. After a while, he noticed a man near the supply carts who seemed too nervous. The man wore a worker's coat and carried a crate marked as medicine. But his boots were clean, not dusty like a real porter's. Aaron approached quietly. "Long night," he said. The man stiffened and turned. His hand dropped toward his belt. That was all the warning Aaron needed. He stepped forward, knocking the crate from the man's arms. It fell open, revealing not medicine, but small metal cylinders, explosives wired together. The fight was fast. The man drew a knife, but Aaron struck first, driving his shoulder into him and sending the blades skidding across the stones. Guards rushed at the noise, but one explosion lit the night, shaking the gate and throwing Aaron to the ground. Pain roared through his body, hot and sharp. The last thing he saw before darkness came was the flare of fire climbing the gate wall. When he woke, everything hurt. He was inside an infirmary again, this time with smoke still clinging to his clothes. Through blurry eyes, he saw Queen Isabella standing before him. Her royal cloak was gone. She wore only a simple gray dress. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled slightly. "You're out of your mind," she said, her voice breaking. "You went there alone. He tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "I found them. They were setting charges." "I know," she said softly. "You stopped them." But the explosion, her words caught in her throat. She looked at his bandaged arm and chest, and he saw her eyes fill with something he had never seen in them before. Fear, for her throne or the city, but for him. "You could have died," she whispered. He gave a faint, weak smile. "I've come close before." Her voice trembled again. "It doesn't make it better." She turned away for a moment, trying to hide the tears shining in her eyes. Then she looked back at him. "This can't be happening again. I can't lose another soldier because of this madness." He wanted to tell her not to worry, that he had faced worse, but his strength failed. When he fell silent, she reached forward and lightly placed her hand over his. For a ruler who never showed weakness, that one simple touch said more than any speech. Outside, the city bells rang to tell the people that danger was over for now. Inside, the queen sat beside a half-conscious soldier, realizing she had crossed a line she had never dared before. Her calm armor had cracked. And what lay beneath was not a monarch, but simply a woman who could not bear to see brave men bleed for her cause. The night stretched on, quiet and dim. Erin drifted in and out of sleep, feeling her hand still there. The queen stayed where she was until dawn broke again over the city's towers, carrying both relief and the heavy truth that the war inside her walls was far from over. Days passed after the explosion at the western gate. Repairs continued day and night. The city still smelled of smoke, mixed with the salty air from the sea. People whispered about the man who had stopped the bombs. They called him the soldier who saved the crown. Erin did not care for names or praise. He still hurt every time he moved, but the pain was smaller than before. His only thought was to finish what had begun. He stayed in the infirmary under strict orders, but Queen Isabella came to see him often. Sometimes she brought reports, sometimes only silence. She would sit near his bed, speaking softly about how the people were calm again, how the nobles now praised his name even though they had once doubted him. Yet each time she looked at him, her eyes showed worry. She did not speak. One morning, Captain Harris entered the room, carrying a bundle of messages. His face was serious. "We found something," he said, setting the papers down. The man at the gate had contact with someone inside the palace. They left traces of secret payments in the royal treasury records. Erin pushed himself up despite the pain. "Another traitor?" Harris nodded. "This time it is someone higher, someone close to the queen herself." Queen Isabella took the pages from his hand. Her lips pressed tight as she read. She said nothing. Then after a moment, she looked at Harris. "Do what must be done," she said quietly. After he left, she turned toward Erin. "I should have seen it sooner." "My own court has been shadowed for too long." Erin leaned back on the pillow. "Treacherous men hide well when power protects them. But they all make mistakes." She looked down at his bandaged arm. "And brave men pay the cost of those mistakes." That evening, the investigation moved fast. The name revealed from the documents was Lord Craven, the chief of supply. He was trusted with deliveries meant for the royal army. He had been sending half the supplies outside the city to fund the coming rebellion. When evidence was shown to him, he tried to flee the palace. Erin left his bed against the healer's warning and joined the guards searching the grounds. The queen had not ordered him to go, but something inside him told him he had to finish this part himself. The chase reached the old tunnel that ran under the citadel, once built as an escape passage for royalty. Rain poured down as the soldiers followed footprints into the darkness. The tunnel was long, narrow, and damp, the air heavy with earth and water. Erin moved carefully, his weapon ready. He heard movement ahead, footsteps, then the sound of metal scraping. When he turned the corner, he saw Craven trying to open the outer gate. "It's over," Erin said. The queen gave mercy to none who betrayed her. Turn back and face it. The man turned, his eyes wild. "You think you saved her? You only delayed the fall? There will be factions who will rise. You cannot guard her from them all." Erin answered calmly. "Then I will try." The man raised a pistol, but Erin was faster. He fired once, hitting the wall close enough to startle Craven. The man dropped his weapon, slipped on the wet stones, and fell hard. By the time the guards reached them, Craven was already gone. Erin stayed silent on the way back to the palace. His shoulder burned again, but he did not slow down. When they brought him before the queen, she looked both relieved and sad. She stood by the window, the storm's light flickering behind her. "It ends with him," she said softly. "The rebellion is cracked before it could breathe." "For now," Aaron said. "But someone else will try one day. Power always attracts such men." She nodded slowly. "Then I must learn to defend, not only with armies, but with trust. You've shown me that." He looked at her quietly. "You've shown me something too." Her eyes met his. "What is that?" "That a ruler's heart can still be human." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that held both gratitude and sorrow. "And yours," she said, "is stronger than any armor I have ever seen." After the storm ended, the city began to breathe again. The gates reopened, merchants returned, and the sound of laughter filled the market once more. The queen walked among her people without escort for the first time in months. She saw their smiles and realized how close she had come to losing everything. Aaron recovered fully within weeks. He wore the royal crest now on his uniform, but he disliked the attention it brought. When the queen announced before the entire court that he would serve as royal defender of the realm, he stood silently as cheers filled the hall. She pinned the silver emblem to his chest herself, her hands steady, but her eyes soft. "This is my reward," she said, "but also my trust." He bowed slightly. "I will not fail you, my queen." The hall fell silent for a moment before applause thundered through the air. Later, when the ceremony ended, they found themselves alone on the balcony overlooking the city. The sun was setting beyond the horizon, painting the sky with gold and red. She stood beside him, looking out at the peaceful towers. "Strange," she said softly, "how the world keeps moving after so much pain." "That is what makes it worth protecting," Aaron said. They did not speak for a long time after that. The light grew dim, the first stars began to appear, and the wind carried the calm scent of a city reborn. The queen turned toward him one last time and said, "You should rest, royal defender." He smiled a little. "Only once the world is safe." She laughed quietly, the sound gentle against the fading day. As night fell over the citadel, two figures stood side by side, one a ruler, one a soldier, both changed forever by fire, trust, and the simple courage that makes human hearts unbreakable.